Hi guys, welcome to Chapter 14, Medieval Japan. So this is going to talk about the different types of people, how they organized into clans, and how they, the emperor's powers, and how they ruled by shoguns, and how that all came about. We're going to talk about early Japan, shoguns and the samurai, and then life in medieval Japan. This is actually pretty interesting. You get the samurai, they're pretty cool, and how they fought each other and they had control. So this will be a pretty cool chapter. So today, you're going to talk about early Japan. So first I'm going to talk about Japan's geography and how it has mountains and islands and it's isolated, and that's how it shaped the society. It's a chain of islands that stretch north to south in the northern Pacific Ocean. Japan's islands number more than 3,000 and many of them are tiny. And here's a map right here that shows you. It's a group of islands together. Many of them are tiny. All right, so for centuries, most Japanese lived on the four largest islands: Hakioto, Honshu, Shikoku, and Kyushu. Okay, and you can see them on the map. They are the largest islands. So like China, much of Japan is covered in mountains. So in fact, the islands of Japan are actually the tops of mountains that rise off the ocean floor. About 188 of Japan's mountains are volcanoes. Many earthquakes occur in Japan because the islands lie in the area where parts of the Earth's surface often shift. So there's a big shift here. So when two plates hit each other, that's when the earthquake occurs, when they're constantly moving on the level of the Earth that has lava. So they're kind of the shift. The plates are the ground that you walk on. So they're large, they hit each other, and earthquakes occur. Because of Japan's mountains, only about 20% of its land can be farmed. Throughout Japan's history, local armies often fought over the patches of fertile farmland. So there's not much, but so people were fighting over it. They wanted it. Just as in ancient Greece, the rugged terrain forced many Japanese to turn to the sea for living. Early on, they settled in villages along the coast and fished for food. Fish and seafood are still important in the Japanese diet. The sea surrounding Japan's islands made it easy for people in ships to travel along the coast and from island to island. It encouraged people to become merchants, traveling from village to village with goods to trade. The vast ocean around Japan's islands, however, kept the Japanese people isolated or separate from the rest of Asia. As a result, Japan developed its own fiercely independent society with its own religion, art, literature, and government. So it was the people from the mainland, it was hard for them to get over to Japan. So a lot of the stuff, they were isolated and by themselves, so they had their own culture. The first settlers, so we have Japan's earliest people probably came from Northeast Asia between 30,000 and 10,000 BC. At that time, Japan was joined to the Asian continent by land. These early people hunted animals and gathered wild plants. They used fire and stone tools, and they lived in pits dug into the ground. Who were the Johom? Oh, I can't even pronounce some of these names. In about 5000 BC, these wandering groups began to develop a culture. They made clay pottery using knotted cords to make designs on the clay surface. Today, this culture is called Jomon, which means cord marks in the Japanese language. Modern archaeologists have found many pieces of Johom pottery throughout Japan. Over the time, Johom people settled in fishing villages along the coast. Fishing became their way of life. Why are the Yahoo important? The Johom culture lasted until about 300 BC. At that time, a new group of people appeared in Japan. Modern archaeologists have named the culture Yahoo, after a place in Japan where they first dug up its artifacts. The Yahoo were the ancestors of the Japanese people. They introduced farming to Japan and practiced a number of skills that they may have learned from the Chinese and Koreans. They made pottery on potter's wheels and grew rice in paddies. A paddy in a rice field that is flooded when a rice is planted and drained for the harvest. The Yahoo also were skilled in metalworking. They made axes, knives, and hoes from iron, and the swords, spears, and bells from bronze. Bells were used in religious rituals, a practice that is still common today. So here's a couple of things, the bell that they use still today, and some of the stuff that the Ch14 people used, they used to make. And so I want you to continue reading this section. It talks about how they organized themselves into clans, and the clan is a group of families related by blood or marriage, and they would stay with these. I want you to also finish reading. I posted in Classroom under this assignment that you have this packet, this chapter, so you could read these pages right in there. Okay, so continue reading, and then it's going to talk about how they went into, a prince came in and took charge, and he did some changes. He created a constitution. It's like a plan of government, just like our constitution, and gave all the power to the emperor, who had to be obeyed by the Japanese people. And if you want to read about his biography, about the prince who started this, you can. Then it goes in, what is Shinto? Again, this is another group of people. I'm sorry, not people. This is the religion. And it was based on nature spirits. So this is like your spirit animal. There's the idea of animalism. We have, when people needed help, they would ask their animals for help. They would build shrines, holy places to those people. So you're going to finish reading that up to this page. You have page 490, and I want you to answer the questions. We have 1, 2, and you could do number 4. You could skip number 3.